I think it's finally time to talk about the Asian carp problem. I've been meaning to talk about this for a long time on the channel, and I really didn't think it was a big issue. And it seems like everybody on social media and out on the lakes actually blames the terrible fishing on Asian carp. It makes a lot of sense. Fishing this year and fishing last year was really difficult compared to previous years, and these past 2 years have also shown a lot more Asian carp in Kentucky Lake and the surrounding areas. So I noticed this big change in the fishing. Other anglers noticed this big change in the fishing, so there must be something there. But I wanted to wait until we had more of an opportunity to see what it was like. So with FLW coming and Bassmaster coming, I wanted to wait and see exactly what their weights came out to and how these guys said the fishing was after the event, during practice. And what I got was exactly what I expected, with the biggest heart-wrenching moment coming from none other than G-Man himself.
Wiggly! Wiggly! Your lake ain't the same, son. They don't want us to say nothing, but it ain't the same.
Now it was really cool to sit there and watch him take his fish out of his live well, put them in the weigh-in bag, but what he had to say right then and there was one of the toughest things I've heard about Kentucky Lake. You know, Gerald is so full of positivity, PMA, positive mental attitude, and the fact that he had something negative to say, and in his voice you could hear it, that it really bothered him, that's just kind of mind-boggling to me. So if you go by the winning weights from FLW and Bassmaster, they look pretty good in the top 10 of each tournament. You know, in the Bassmaster event, Strader had 80 pounds, and in the FLW event, Lambert had over 100 pounds, which, by the way, is pretty astonishing, especially considering that's a 25 plus pound fish day on average for 5 fish. That's pretty dang impressive on a lake that everybody said is kind of difficult right now. But before I get into the fishing, I just want to kind of break down what Asian carp are. If you guys have not heard about them before, if you're not on the TVA system, the Mississippi, that kind of stuff, then this is pretty important for you guys to know. Asian carp weren't directly introduced to our lakes, the TVA lakes. They were actually used to clean farm ponds in the 70s. Now there is documentation of Asian carp in the Mississippi River in the 70s, but what everybody seems to conclude is that they got into the TVA system and all these other lakes during some flooding back then, and the population has just grown ever since. And these past 2 years, it's been really, really, really noticeable. I remember my first Asian carp. It wasn't 2 years ago, it was many years ago, and I thought it was so interesting to see these fish flying out of the water 3 or 4 feet. It's just something that you don't see every day with bass fishing or crappie fishing, anything like that. It's a lot different. And it's not the fish themselves really that's the issue, it's what they eat. You see, Asian carp are filter feeders. They eat plankton, and you know, that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of fish in the lakes around us that eat plankton. That's what they do. But these are on such a gigantic level, and the fact that shad and other bait fish eat plankton really is a problem, because if there's no plankton for these bait fish to eat, the carp are just going to keep growing, and there's not going to be any, you know, bait fish for our game fish like, you know, bass and crappie and other sport fish to eat. So that's mainly why they're such a big issue, and they're also kind of dangerous. I don't know if you've ever been in a boat and been slapped in the face with a fish, but from what I understand, it's not very fun. Eradication is the biggest issue that we're facing with these carp, because there's just so many of them. There's 4 different species: the black carp, the grass carp, the big head carp, and then the one that you see jumping out of the water, the ones that you see more than any, the silver carp. Those are the ones that are kind of dangerous whenever you're riding in a boat, if you haven't figured that part out. But there's just so many of them that there's not really a great plan in the works yet to actually get rid of them. And honestly, getting rid of them as a whole is going to be extremely difficult to do. You see, we've extinct many animals throughout the years, and none of them have really been as prominent as these fish. Like, there's too many of them. There's a lot of them. Usually whenever something goes extinct, there's not many of them. In this case, there's way too many, and there's not really an easy way to get rid of them. But if there was a way to get rid of them, there would be 3 different steps in doing so. Number 1 would be blocking them from coming in and out of the lakes. Now, we're going to talk about Kentucky Lake in this case, and the easiest way to do it, or the most useful way to do it, would be to make some sort of barrier at the dam between Pickwick and going up into the Kentucky Dam. And the TWRA actually talked about this during a meeting that they had up at Paris, right up the road from me. And they're going to use a sound system, apparently, some sort of sound thing. And that makes a lot of sense because Asian carp are very sensitive to sound, especially those silver carp. That's why they jump out of the water whenever you go past them with your big motor, okay? You don't really see that with the smaller fish. It's usually just Asian carp flying out of the water. That's why they do that, because of the sound. So say that we were able to make some sort of barrier that stops them from coming in and going out of the lake. The next problem to face would be getting rid of what's in the area. And that's going to be difficult. That's going to take a lot of anglers, a lot of time, and many hours on the water. It's way past, people going out with bows and shooting them. This is going to be on a commercial fishing level where it's already been said and done before, and they've collected hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds of these things and not even done a single dent. And then the next issue, and probably the greatest one, the one that's gonna keep everybody on their feet, is monitoring the situation, making sure that these carp don't find their way back into the Kentucky Lake, or whichever lake they decide to use as a guinea pig, which I believe is going to be Kentucky and Barkley. Like I said, this is past us as anglers. This is going to have to go to the feds, and I'm going to see if I can't find a link, some sort of something, so we can get in touch with our Congress and our congressmen and everything to get a hold of them, to get some kind of voice. Speaking of voices, we actually have a ton of people in the community that are trying to have a voice in this. Number 1 on my list would be Marc Menendez, Bass Elite angler and Kentucky Lake expert in my mind. This guy knows Kentucky and Barkley Lakes pretty well, and he's been really avid in talking about this and trying to get something done. He was even up at the meeting in Paris this past week or last weekend, whenever. That says a lot about a guy that, is busy all the time. He still made time for something very important to him. Let's talk about the fishing for just a minute. Everybody says that the fishing is tough, and I didn't really know what to expect. That's why I waited to see what these Bass Elite guys and these FLW Tour guys had to say about it. And even though they cracked 80 pounds and 100 pounds very respectively, there was a lot of people that struggled. There was a lot of people that found these carp. A lot of stuff from the pros uploaded onto Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that kind of stuff. It's a real problem, and they were saying that it's tough to, catch fish, and I can understand it. I've seen it. I've lived it. You might not get that looking at Jason Lambert catching, 101 pounds of Kentucky Lake bass, but whenever you go down the field, some second place is Scott Martin. He was back like 28 pounds, I think, something like that. That's a lot to be back. But are the Asian carp really affecting Kentucky Lake? It's too soon to tell. It's too soon to really know. Looking back 30 years of data, there's not enough there. But if you look at the trends from those 30 years, it seems like we have 2 years of good bass fishing, 2 years of bad bass fishing, and then 2 years of good fishing again, and then that trend goes on up until the past couple of years. So there is some sort of change, I believe, that has happened this year, last year, and maybe the year before, but it's too soon to tell. TWRA said that there's going to be like 6 to 8 months before they can actually really get some sort of evidence into this, and I'm really excited to see what they have to say about it. Regardless if it is a problem with the bass fishing or not, it's still a problem. We need to get rid of these fish, not only because they are overpopulating the lake, but also for safety. Like, I'm serious, guys, getting hit with a fish at 50 miles an hour, it probably sucks a lot. Be sure to share this video. This is really important stuff, guys. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to get this issue resolved. Fishermen Against Asian Carp on Facebook, it's a really growing page, group thing. There's a lot of people in there with a lot of great ideas. Not all of them are going to be useful to us at this point, but they are worth taking a look at. That's all I got for this video. I hate that we have to talk about this, but That's where we're at right now, at least on my lake, and I feel like everybody should be at least a little bit concerned about this. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, share it, please share it, get it out there. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.